My story begins in a small monocultural and monolinguistic village in Lisco, Nebraska, where the most important topics were about the weather, how the crops were doing, if we were going hunting, and of course, you can't forget about our favorite football team, the Huskers. My first contact, if you can call it that, with other languages and cultures were limited to movies, our brief trips throughout various areas in the States, and later by choral music. Needless to say, I grew up monolingual with no sign of that changing, or so I and many others thought. I have always had a love for music and singing and was in any choir I could. Through music I was first introduced to speaking and singing foreign languages. I'd mostly sing Italian pieces in my formal vocal lessons, but also had the pleasure of singing in Hebrew, Latin, German, and several others all by the time I graduated high school. Also before I graduated high school, I had my first experience traveling abroad. Between my junior and senior years, I was lucky enough to be selected to be a part of Nebraska's Ambassadors of Music as a first soprano and as a flutist. Through this experience, I was able not only to sing a song in Swahili, but visit 7 countries in 14 days: England, France, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Austria, Italy, and Germany. Even though I hadn't enjoyed my Spanish classes in high school, I had a new desire to learn languages after experiencing these new cultures and languages firsthand. Sometime between high school and my sophomore year in college, I became interested in my family history. I had always assumed that we could be traced back to England since we never really talked about anything cultural, nor did my mom or grandparents make any specialty non-American, non-English dishes at celebrations. Needless to say, I was shocked to learn that I was only the 4th generation in America on my dad's side, and that my great-grandpa and grandma had immigrated over from Germany in the early 1900s. I couldn't understand why no one in our family thought it important to learn German and keep it alive to pass down through the generations. As I asked more questions, it became clear that there were 2 motivations for my great-grandpa Morris to not pass on German. The first was because he wanted to become truly Americanized and wanted his children to be seen as American, not German. The second came in the 1930s with the rise of Hitler. He became afraid of being identified as German and didn't want his children to be harmed because of their heritage. Due to this, my grandpa only knew a few words of German and could understand some of it, but never learned how to read or write, nor did he have any type of mastery over the language. And by the time my father's generation came along, pretty much no German was understood or spoken. As my interest grew about my great-grandfather's history, I became interested in German, well, everything. I decided to dual major in English and German with a minor in Japanese, and then I would study abroad for a year in Germany. You're probably thinking, hold up, where did Japanese enter the picture? Well, long story short, early in my high school career, a friend of mine introduced me to the magical world of anime, and by extension, manga. I started drawing, listening to music, researching Japanese culture, and trying to learn how to play songs on the piano from my favorite anime. I quickly decided that wherever I went to college, it had to have a Japanese program where I could at least minor in Japanese. This is what led me to choosing Nebraska Wesleyan University. So in keeping with that love of Japanese culture, I took as many years of Japanese as I could and even got to spend 2 weeks in Japan with my university. During the course of learning 2 languages simultaneously, I found myself code switching, or perhaps code mixing is a more accurate account of what I would do. When I didn't know a word in one of the languages, I found myself filling in with the other language within one sentence. My junior year of college marked the start of my study abroad experience. I had chosen to return to Germany to try and learn the language better and with hopes of reconnecting with their family that remained there. I was accepted into a small university in Trier, Germany called Trier Universität. As many people find when they travel abroad, the common language often is English, and it was because of this that my German didn't improve as much as it should have. But I did go from a B1 to a B2 or intermediate level in German. I found myself loving the scenery, language, and overall lifestyle of living in Germany. While there, it became embarrassingly obvious to me that many English words were indeed borrowed from German, but didn't always mean the same thing. I give my example, but it's not exactly appropriate. I found that what I struggled most with in the German language was the passive sentence structures, dialects, shortened forms of words, and words that were borrowed from French. My terrible German accent and mispronunciation of words was also an issue. When I first arrived, I had a hard time finding my apartment, or Wohnung, because when I would ask for directions, I would pronounce them wrong, so it took a while to find someone who could understand me. The dialects became a bigger issue when I finally got to meet my family, who lived in Flensburg, Germany. I had been invited to their family reunion, and I knew I had to go. The younger generations were easier to understand, but the older generations were much harder. I recall having to ask an older relative to repeat himself over 5 times. Surprisingly, he remained patient and kept repeating for me. I was embarrassed to figure out that he had been asking me where I lived in the States in just a slightly different way than I had learned. The conversation didn't make it far, but I tried, and I still felt good that I was trying to reconnect, and that they seemed to want the same thing. I never felt that my German improved much, nor that I had any kind of mastery of the language, except when my mom and godmother came over to visit, and I had to help them book hotels and navigate in German. Unfortunately, since my return to the States, I haven't been able to use or practice my German and have started to lose the grammar and vocabulary, and for the same reasons, I have lost even more of my Japanese. While it still saddens me that my father's side lost their connections to their German roots, I have a better understanding as to why it happened. It further saddens me that I still consider myself monolingual, but hope to one day change it to multilingual. I plan to one day encourage my future children to learn other languages and cultures, as it opens the doors to understanding and is a beautiful reminder that we are a country of immigrants.